Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Lajos Papp, and today I will talk you about the forgotten power of the Docker socket. So let's just share my screen. Okay, so you can see there's an empty terminal, so you will be seeing some typing, but I also created some slides for this presentation. So first of all, what I want to start is that the Docker API, we always forget that whenever we typing Docker commands, like even the simplest one is like docker run alpine echo okay, it's still a client-server communication. Okay, so actually when I'm typing this one, the client line, the CLI tool Docker is connecting to the server and just sending some commands. So basically, the Docker API is a quite usual REST API. So it listens on a port, and actually sometimes on a Unix socket, and just answers to some JSON. So for example, if you check the documentation, the API is right now on version 1.41, and it describes all the APIs. So for example, if you want to do something like Docker PS, and right now it's nothing running here, then what you can do is check the API and let's see what happens in the background. So with the containers, you can see that listing the containers, that's part of the Docker API. And if you scroll down, you can see that the actual path is /container/JSON. Now you are wondering like, okay, where is the Docker daemon license? In old times, I do remember when the Docker daemon was listening on an actual TCP port, but lately it just got disabled, and nowadays Docker is listening only on a Unix socket. Now, if you want to try to talk to the Docker API directly, we can do it with curl. And actually, curl can not only talk to a TCP endpoint, like usually to port 8080, it can also talk to a Unix socket. How do you do that? You just use the Unix socket. And right now on Mac, Windows, and Linux, it's usually you can reach it at HTTP. It's just needed for curl, and the actual path is war run docker.sock. Okay, what am I writing? Okay, so that's the socket, and now I have to specify like HTTP and the API. And API / what was it? Containers. I cannot write containers / JSON. So nothing is here. We can see that it's really, we are talking to a server. And one interesting API point, when you check all the available endpoints, then you will find that, for example, if you are checking the ping endpoint, you will get an OK response. So, for example, this is an easy way to check whether the Docker API is up and running, the Docker daemon is running. Okay, so let's just start some containers so we get something back with the container list. Let's just start something like docker run alpine, and just let's sleep for 100 seconds. Okay, now it's running in the foreground. Okay, that was a bad idea. Let's just, okay, let's do it this way. Let's kill both containers. What happens? Okay, I'm having trouble finding out which window I am, and now I was just stopping the screen sharing, but now everything is restored. So what I was doing is, okay, I'm not here. Okay, let's just do it again. I was just closing a window which I didn't want it to. So let's start a container, docker run, and this time let's put it into the background in a detached state. And if I start it again, and I let sleep it for 100 seconds, okay, now I can do docker ps, and I can see that one container is running. And now, if I want to do it the same way, directly calling the API, what I can do is curl on the Unix socket var run docker.socket, and it goes API / containers / JSON. Okay, so now I can see the JSON. And if I want to, let's say, see what's here, I can use the JID, which is the JSON Interactive Debugger, which opens up the terminal, and I can see what's here. And let's say if I just want to print out the ID, and of course it will be the ID. So I can just type this one into JQ, and let's say I want to print out all the IDs with big capital I. I was mistyping it. Yeah, it's too big, but okay. So you can see basically I implemented Docker PS in a different way. And if I even make it silent, okay, for some reason it's getting really, really slow. I'm not sure why. Okay, but that was it. So now that we are getting comfortable with what Docker API is about and how we can use it, yeah, we have seen the ping and we did the Docker containers. Okay, and another interesting endpoint was actually that I was finding by reading the documentation is, okay, for some reason, my network is really, really slow. Okay. I think it was also opened up in the what's happening with my network. Okay, so yeah, maybe the streaming is making the network slower. So what I wanted to show you, but right now, even my, oh, no, I know what's happening. Horrible. My laptop is dying the battery, and when the battery is dying, it's getting slower. Oh, the charger, yeah. Let's hope if it's working now. It's working. Sorry about that. Okay, maybe I will just skip this part because time is just flying. So let's just move on to the Nginx proxy. Okay. So what is the Nginx proxy? Yeah, it's still, because my laptop is low of energy, it's really driving the CPU close to 100%. So Hopefully it will get better. So Nginx Proxy is pretty much something like an ingress, like if you know the Kubernetes ingress concept, ingress for Docker. What it helps to try to do is whenever you run a container locally, it helps you to make it available with a virtual host. So what do I mean about that one? Usually when you create an Nginx container, so let's just do that, docker run -dp Nginx, container is started up. We can see that now Docker was selecting a random high port, 55,000 something. So if we open it up, no surprise, is the built-in Nginx. Okay, so far so good. But we want to avoid two things. Like one is using localhost and the other one is using stupid high ports. And of course, when you are running a lot of web-based services, all want to use port 80. So usually what you do is you don't expose it something like docker-p, and then you are like 8080:80, because next time you have to remember, oh, 8080 is already used, so I have to use 8081 or 8082. If you just don't specify the first one, which was actually the same effect if I'm using the capital P, then you can see that a random port is chosen for me. Okay, so let us see what Nginx Proxy can do for us. So first of all, yeah, I have to switch to the other terminal. Okay, so this one. Okay, so let's just clear it up. Let's delete the previous containers. We don't need them. Okay. And now let's go back to the documentation of Nginx Proxy. And for the usage, it's just telling us, okay, you know what? Just start an Nginx container. And look, this is the trick. We are giving access to the Docker socket inside of the container. So basically what happens is that we are starting a container from this Nginx Proxy image, and the container itself is able to listen on the Docker endpoints. Okay, so I did not explain the Docker event endpoints, what it is about. So look at this one. So yeah, I was showing you already this curl way to talk to the API server. But one interesting endpoint is if you check that somewhere at the very bottom, there is, maybe it's hidden in the system, and where is events? Monitoring events. Okay, so this is the endpoint I want to showcase you. Actually, we don't have to use cur to connect to the event endpoints. There is a built-in Docker command for that. And no surprise, this is the Docker events command. So let's see what happens if I run Docker events. So look, right now, I didn't get back the prompt because now Docker is connecting to the API and waiting for events. Let's see what happens if I start now a container again. So look at this one, docker run -it alpine. Okay, so I started a container with docker run, and look, we can see that a couple of events happened. So first one is a container created, and then the container is attached. Then the network is connected to, or actually it's the other way around, the container is connected to the network. The container is started and the container is resized. Resize is meaning that because we are attached to the container, the terminal has to be the same size like we have. So you can see that even a simple docker run command actually under the hood is like 5 API calls. So I was surprised when first time I have seen like, oh, Docker run is actually like, first I create the container, I start the container and attach to it. Oh, I thought Docker run should be just like one simple command, but no, you can see what's happening here. And look even what happens if I exit from the container. You can see that the container has died. Okay, so it's also an event. Okay, so this is the Docker event endpoints, and basically that's what you can do. Like if you connect to var/docker var run docker.sock endpoint, then you can listen to all of these events. So what happens with Nginx Proxy is that the Nginx Proxy starts in a container, connects to the same events API, and whenever a new container starts, it will inspect whether it has a special environment variable called virtual host, and if it has, it will regenerate a new Nginx configuration and use the newly started container as a virtual host configured in Nginx. Okay, so let's just show how it works. So first of all, again, I just delete the running containers. Okay, I stop the endpoint. And let's just follow the instruction and start this simple container. Okay, so now I started the Nginx Proxy container, docker ps. Okay, so it listens on port 8080. If I would try to open up now in my browser at localhost 80, right now it answers to me, but there is nothing to serve because there are no other containers to running. Okay, so it was telling me, sorry, I wanted to do it clear. So the documentation tells us that the only thing we have to do is start a container and give it a virtual host environment variable. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to show you that there is a special domain name which always resolves to localhost, to 127.0.0.1. And actually, there are more than one DNS, but one of my favorite is we are using, which one am I using now? vcap.me. So if you do like anything under the domain vcap.me, and it will resolve to 128. So what I will do now is just simply run a container, docker run nginx, and I run it in detached mode. I expose the port, and I also give it an environment variable, which has to be virtual host equals. And now what I can do is just call it web.vcap.me. Okay, so now the container is started. So we can see Nginx is running, and it's listening on port something. Yeah, actually, I really like the VS Code plugin because you can just simply right click and open in browser, and it will open up you the stupid port number, so you don't have to copy and paste it from command line. Okay, so this is the usual way we reach this container, but now let's see if Nginx Proxy is really working. So by the documentation, this host should work. So let's just check it. Indeed, it works. So basically, I was able to start a container opening up a random port. I don't have to take care about which port is already occupied or which one is free. I can just open it up and it will be available with the vcap.me domain name. Okay, so let's just start a different container, and I'm doing quite a lot of Docker trainings, and for the demo purposes, I have a Docker image, which is called 12 factor. So let's just start that one up. So Docker run, and it's called 12 factor. Okay. And if I want to reach it, I will use the same environment host variable, and let's call it test.recap.me. Okay, so I started this one up, and let's see if it's available. Okay, so it really works, and you can see that it's really a 12-factor application because this can be configured with environment variables. So let's just try to use, let's say, the title and the color environment variable. I just kill the last container. Because it's so often that I kill the last container, I already have a docker remove last alias, which is just getting the last container and just kills it. So docker remove last, I killed the last one, and I restart it, but this time I give it a title, meetup, and I also give it a color, and let's do it with gray. That's boring. Okay, so I restarted the container, I refresh it, and now it's gray background and showing me meetup. Okay, so let's move on. Let's try to understand how it works. So if you check the documentation, it will tell you that under the hood, it's using a tool called Docker.gen. Yeah, here is it. So it's a Docker.gen. What Docker.gen does, again, it uses the Docker socket endpoint, it connects to it, and every time there is an event, it will call a Golang template and render everything which is inside. So look at the Nginx template. This is used by the Nginx proxy. So what happens is that you can see that basically this template, this Golang template, will be rendered every time a new container is started. And you can see that this will generate a new Nginx configuration. So look, we can see that it goes over all containers which has a virtual host environment variable and will generate some Nginx configuration. Let's see if it's really happening. We can look into the container by going into the proxy, and it generates into etc Nginx. Where is it? Am I in the wrong container? No, I'm in the correct container. So let me double check how it works. If we look into this file, we can see it's generating into etc/nginx convd. So etc nginx convd, and here is the default configuration. So now I'm just opening it up, and if I look for test, look at this one. This part of the Nginx configuration was generated for me by Docker.gen. So this is really nice. And when I first found this tool, this Nginx, I was thinking about, maybe I can create some customized template and use this customized template for my own purposes. This is indeed what I did, and let me show what I was playing around. Oh, I'm in the wrong editor. This is this one, yeah. Okay, so this time what I'm doing is I'm just starting the Nginx proxy here, And you can see the same way like I was doing it in the command line. I'm just starting it up from a Docker compose file. So let's just restart all the containers, but instead of individual files, I restarted with Docker compose. Okay, so let's do a Docker compose. And look what happened. The Nginx proxy started again, and we can see that, okay, this is my 12-factor image, and now it is telling Docker meetup with Coral background, and the body is trick and tips, and it should run on meetup vcap me. Let's check. It's running. Okay, it's up and running. So now it happens what I wanted to do. So look what I did here. I started here another container using Docker Gen, but with a customized template. And just to see how Docker Gen works, actually we can do it in a simple way in the command line. I can show you my first template file, which is, look at this one. If you have ever seen Docker, or sorry, Golang templating, you can see that the double curly braces show you that it's a Golang template, and the range is going over containers and prints out the key and the container ID. So look at this one. If I do Docker Gen and I specify the file, prints out to the screen all the containers. Okay, so this is how Docker Gen works. Now look at my template, and my first template, or sorry, I'm using x.template, and look at this one. What I'm doing here is going through on the same list, like Docker Gen, only on virtual host, and I'm creating a link. And what happens is that I generate an index.html, and the index.html is also served by another Nginx container, which has a virtual host environment variable. So basically what happens if I go to list vcap me, I can see that there are two containers running, and here is the meetup. Now the nice thing is that if I create a new container, then what I expect is that this list will be updated automatically. So let's see that one. So if I do a okay, so here is it. I start a new container. I give it a name, something like dinner, and I start it on the same network. And let's see what happens. If I go back to this screen, look, it automatically appeared here. It is regenerating. And if I click on it, it opened up in a new screen. Okay, so this is what I wanted to have, the same feature like the Docker plugin has in VS Code. Like I can just simply right click on a container and open it up in the browser, but you can see it's still using the high port. Okay, so let me just show you the end result, because I'm running out of time. That my final solution was that if I copy this one here, and okay, I'm starting up now a couple of other containers, a green one. Okay, I forgot the -d. Okay, so we can see that the list is already updated, and this is the green one. Okay, nice. I can start a new one. Let's say it will be yellow. So I'm just starting up a new container. and it's already available here. So what I was doing, I make this one a little bit smaller. Oh, sorry, I was closing it. Look what happened. I have just created a template which not only displays the links, but I also created an iframe for each of those containers. So basically what happens, this is a page refreshing itself every time a new container is started. And here the iframes are showing the new containers. So look, what I would like to see is, if I'm creating a new container, and let's say this time it should be red, the container is started, and I come back here, and in a couple of seconds, the red one shows up. Okay, so it's automation all with the Docker socket endpoint. Okay, so let's move on. The next thing I wanted to talk to you is the Docker plugins. So what is Docker plugins? It is again a tool which is using the Docker endpoints, and what it does, every time a new container is starting or any event is happening, you can hook up scripts to these events. Okay, so let's see what are the available plugins. If I go back to this one, I'll just copy and paste from here, plugins list. Okay, so you can see that there are 4 built-in plugins. I'm running out of time, so maybe I will just show you right away 2, which is working. So the auto remove is, as you can see, it will remove containers whenever they stop. So you can see that most of the time when we have a lot of containers running, let's just stop these containers. Okay, so a lot of times if you just starting containers and you forget to put the --rm option, then there will be a lot of containers running here. But look at this one. I'm starting up 2 plugins now, the auto remove and the timeout plugin. And look what happens. Now if I'm running a container, docker run, and let's say I do an alpine and with echo OK, and you can see that I forgot to push here the --rm, and still look what happens. The container has started and then died, but look, oh, it's still there. No, it's not there. You can see this command is not the alpine one. Okay, so it automatically got removed. Why? Because what the plugin did is, let me show you the available plugins. Okay, here it is, available. And the auto remove, it has just one simple hook which binds to the die event. And look how simple is the command. It just calls a docker rm on the first argument, because every time an event is happening, the same script which has the same name like the event will be called with the first parameter with the ID. So look, this is just one line, and you already implemented an auto removal of leftover containers. Let's see the other one, the timeout, which is appropriate for my talk, because I'm also close to timing out. So look what happens. Every time a container is started, what it will do is get out the timeout variable, environment variable, will start another process, sleep for that many time, and then it will kill that container. So look what happens now. If I do now docker run -it alpine, and I give it an extra environment variable called timeout, and let's give it a really short time, just 10 seconds. And look, now I'm trying to do something like, okay, which directory am I in? And maybe 10 seconds is soon over. So, and my container is killed. And also removed, okay? So there are two plugins already working. Now, they were the built-in plugins, and I just created a new plugin, which is a lot of time I find myself when I'm resetting the Docker installation, I always lose all the images I was using. And a lot of times not the most important is that I know that the images are downloaded, but which images did I use? So what I have created a plugin for the for saving all the images I ever used. And look what I did is image stat. And all I did is every time when a container is starting, I'm getting the container image name, and I write it into a file, images.txt. So look, if I start up this one, what was it? Yeah, okay. I can show that there is an images.txt file here in my directory. And look, if I'm starting up a new one, let's say docker run -dp nginx. Even if I delete the whole Docker installation from my computer, I can still see in the images text file that on this day, I was using the Nginx image, okay? And there are endless possibilities, and I think I just run out of time, so I don't have any time to show the last idea. Maybe I just pitch it. What I was thinking about is that we could create admission controller for Docker. What I mean about is that if you're aware of how admission controller works for Kubernetes, is that something is sitting between the client and the API, and what it can do is it can change the request or it can avoid it. So what I was thinking about is that how about that something is sitting in front of the Docker socket and it just filters out a couple of API requests. So for example, what I would like to do is just give a label on specific container, something like protected equals true. And when somebody is trying to delete that container, it will not happen because the admission controller just does not let this request go to the API server. And actually, I was able to implement it with something like 80 lines of Go code, but unfortunately, I run out of time, so I cannot show you. So, thank you. That was my talk.